This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome, everybody out there listening to KLEAN Radio on KFWB News Talk 980, our flagship station, or Sirius XM channel 165, or on our video stream at KLEANradio.com. KLEAN Radio is presented by treatmentline.com. I'd like to welcome everybody out there. We're on a bit of a different time this morning, so if people are out there driving somewhere,
they might be hearing us for the first time.
For the very first time, and they're turning off their radios right now.
That's right.
But this is an odd week, and I just wanted to say something. We're like in the tweener week. It's between the Super Bowl, right? So there's
the tweener week.
The tweener week. There's
Judah, where do you come up with the tweener week?
It's a tween in between. It's my little cute. But we talk.
You're gonna put that in the computer and get picked up as a pedophile.
Yes. I see where your mind is on a Sunday morning. So if you're driving right now, we're a show about addiction and recovery. In the studio, obviously, we have owner of KLEAN Treatment Center, Andrew Spanswick,
right,
and Erica Abfab Spiegelman, therapist.
Hi.
An amazing therapist.
Hi everybody.
And
happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. But the reason I'm bringing that up about we were talking about depression before you came here. And before you and I were on the phone about how prevalent it is in America.
Oh, that's true, we were.
And you're forgetting this quickly.
Well, I forgot it was about you specifically.
It's we're not talking about, but
the tweener comment.
The tweener comment. But here's the thing: I love football. I'm a huge football fan.
Right.
And we know in America that on Monday mornings, if your team loses, the depression rate in whatever state you're in.
My friend Phil has been since he's just devastated. And Rand,
our producer. I can't
England.
Even say the Patriots.
Yeah, we can't hire anyone that's ever lived in Boston anymore.
It dictates
we won't be able
moods.
to function.
It truly does dictate people's moods, and it affects people in their house.
They did do a study actually in Italy where they measured the testosterone levels of fans in a bar of one team and fans in a bar of another team, and the fans whose team won, their testosterone went up, and the fans whose teams lost, their testosterone went down.
Wow.
Yes, it does biologically affect you.
And then it affects everything in your house afterwards because you're depressed. You're going to make your home life depressed.
Energetically, everyone around you is going to suffer, of course.
Right, you're guaranteed to
your
upset
wife.
half of the males in America.
Right.
Well, actually, women watch football is more and more now too, right?
Right.
Probably more women now than men.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they're trying to, there's always the women out there that are saying they watch football, to attract guys.
There's some that really truly like it, but
a few, yeah. But I'm convinced they just do it. They say it because they want to please. They want to please the guy, and I'm always like, that's why we have guys. We have guys to watch football with.
That's another Judah theory.
It is, and usually my theories are a little bit correct.
Right.
But if you
There's
just
no science behind them ever.
There's sometimes there's field science, Andrew.
Field science,
and that's what
case examples.
And that's
life experience.
Life experience, right? Street smart,
right?
Yeah.
It's something I go on.
Yes.
But if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. I also want to really thank somebody. I got a really interesting tweet this morning from somebody that was trying to get help, and now she didn't come to KLEAN, but she spoke to Joe on the phone, Joe Perot, our intake director, and he referred her to a place in New Jersey, and she called me up, she direct messaged me on Twitter, and she said, I'm doing great, I'm in this intense outpatient program, thank you.
That's great.
And that's one of the values of a show like this, is we're not just saying come to KLEAN, we're saying give us a call.
Yeah, there's plenty enough people that need help. We're not
all across America. There are 30 million people right now that are struggling with addiction in some form or another.
And there's resources everywhere. Most states could offer something. There's something out there for everybody.
We actually have a pretty good network, especially now that we open in Washington. We just opened 50 beds in Washington last week.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, really excited about that.
Exciting.
And we're open.
Yeah.
So clients are in there already, and we're filling up pretty quickly.
And one posted on Facebook.
Yeah, our first client actually posted on Facebook that
really?
I'm the first client at KLEAN.
Really?
It wasn't much for her anonymity, but that's her choice.
It's her choice.
But but we're connected to a lot of therapists that have referred to the management group that's up there.
Mm-hmm.
All the clinicians and whatever are connected to clinicians throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
So people that actually come to KLEAN Washington up in the
Washington State.
It's Washington State.
Yeah.
It's actually right on the Columbia River in the ocean. It's beautiful. A little cold, I think, right now, but beautiful. We refer back to those therapists. So we have a network of outpatient therapists throughout the country. And that's why Joe is able to refer that person to an outpatient therapist easily.
And it's pretty cool, because we get these calls all the time. And we're constantly getting calls from people, begging for help. And one of the cool things about, doing stuff like this is we do know a lot of people all across America and in other countries like Britain.
Yep. We do a lot of work in Britain.
Right. So we're able to sort of like, even if you can't afford something here, we will try to get you into a place if you need help.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes KLEAN special. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio, give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. I want to ask you a quick question. What is dual diagnosis? Because KLEAN West Hollywood, we're a dual diagnosis program. What is dual diagnosis?
Yeah, dual diagnosis is where there's a primary issue with substance abuse, so drugs or alcohol, but then there's a secondary diagnosis that involves some type of mental illness. So that can be anything as simple, or not simple, but is common as depression or anxiety. But as complex as major mood disorder or maybe a thought disorder like drug-induced paranoia or similar thought disorder like that, where people actually, their thinking is out of whack and they need medication for that.
That's a great question, because I get this all the time. People don't, a lot of people don't understand what dual diagnosis is. And also they're confused whether their depression is being caused by the alcohol or drugs. I mean, what comes first. And so I think that's also really important for them to understand that they have to get off the substances so we could diagnose really what the problem is.
Right, and we've discussed that before on the show, that that's about baselining a client, getting to where, what's normal, is it the drugs
what's
that's
your
causing,
normal?
The disturbing behavior? And either way, what I like about psychopharmacology, there's a lot of people that say that medicine is bad, psychiatric medicine. A lot of people are scared of it. One of the things that I really like about it, when it's used in conjunction with therapy
properly,
and in a good environment, or milieu, as many of our therapists like to talk about, but a good, pleasant environment where there's good clinical controls and you're there with therapists and doctors that know what they're doing. When we can add medication with therapy in that environment, we're able to actually find out whether or not it's the substances that are causing the psychiatric problems, or whether these mental health issues, psychiatric problems, are actually what's causing people to self-medicate with substances.
Right.
So that allows us to treat both of those issues in the right level.
Which is so fantastic, because I think there's so many people out there that don't understand why they're feeling the way they are.
And I think a lot of treatment facilities don't really have the same sort of level of sophistication we do. Both Dr. Coe and I have been working together since 1991.
Oh, wow.
And we actually started with psychiatric hospitals. We had 9 psychiatric hospitals throughout the Gulf South. And then we moved to California, and I moved to California, and then I dragged him out here like a year later and said, hey, I'm running substance abuse facilities with dual diagnosis. Get your ass out here.
Well, I didn't know you knew him so long.
He actually gave me my first job out of graduate school.
We were actually talking about that the other day, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
By the way, if you just tuned in, give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. Give us a call with any questions you have about addiction. You might be struggling right now with something, and I understand that it's hard to talk about this stuff. This is one of the hardest subjects for people to talk about. 2 things we're talking about right now, mental health and addiction, are probably 2 of the hardest things. It's easy for people out there to say, I have cancer.
But there's so many questions.
Not easy, but
there's a lot of questions. You and I were talking about this earlier this week. People also don't understand what an inpatient is, outpatient center. And people have real questions, but they're basic things that they may feel embarrassed to ask somebody about.
There's so much fear and shame. Also, I mean, our culture is sort of set up that we're scared. One of the reasons I started working in mental health, I did my master's in clinical mental health, and the reason that I did that was because I looked around at the different populations that I could work with from a social service perspective. And a clinical perspective, and the one group that I saw that I thought was most vilified was the mentally ill. And so that's why I centered on working with mental illness. And for my first 5 years out of graduate school for my first master's degree, I went around just going to different hospitals all over Louisiana and Mississippi, and did forensic work in prisons, and got to see sort of the extremes. So I really knew what was extreme psychiatric disorders, and then what was worried well, and what was substance abuse issues, and that vast clinical experience at an extreme level of acuity, where people are really, really sick. And so people always say, oh, mental illness isn't really real or whatever. I'm like, go spend a week in an acute care psychiatric unit.
Read the news. If you really don't believe mental illness is real, read the news.
Especially with the guns and issues like that.
Yeah.
I mean, all these people that we're dealing with have mental
Yeah.
health issues
Right.
more than issues with guns.
And
so.
I think the thing is, I think what people have a hard time understanding is we're not saying it's right. You know, we're not saying mental illness has people aren't accountable or it's okay. We're just saying if you don't, start to
there are
look at
people
this
that are
stuff.
accountable, though.
Right.
It's not the people, though, that have done the action.
Right.
I mean, they're accountable, but the real accountability is that the states and federal government have failed to provide a safety net for mental illness.
Yeah.
When the states strip mental health budgets and try to shift the burden of the federal government through Social Security disability and try to track federal funds to pay for the care of the indigent and the mentally ill, they just gutted all the hospitals. So there's no acute care, psychiatric, state-run government hospitals anymore of any significance. And there's a huge population that have shifted from being in a mental health facility where they actually got decent care. It wasn't all one flew over the cuckoo's nest. There was decent care going on in state hospitals, and they were emptied, and they were emptied on purpose. And the shift was to community mental health centers, outpatient, which their budgets got stripped, and then everybody that was really mentally ill was then deemed criminal and is now in the criminal justice system.
Right. Because there's a continuum of mental illness. There's people that, like you said, suffer from depression all the way to mood disorders and personality disorders. So there's a continuum of really where does that person fall?
See, and I'm horrified. You watch things like Cops or, Jail or, State Troopers and whatever.
Beverly Hills,
Right.
Housewives.
Every reality show.
Yeah, and you just see professionals, though, police officers and whatever, who don't really have. I mean, I can watch those shows, and often I can see, the person clearly is suffering from a mental illness,
right,
and their level of insight is
or
very
empathy.
There's no empathy because they're just thinking from a criminal justice standpoint. Now, I understand that they have to because that's their job, but there should be some level of intervention post
or education for them.
Education for them, but also even if their job is just to contain a situation and bring the people to the jail, great. I understand that you can't have. There's no gray area when somebody's in a violent situation or a police officer's life's at risk. I mean, they have to take appropriate action. But at the same point, in fact, there was a police officer in Ithaca, New York, where I largely grew up, who had been working with a woman who was schizophrenic, and they had a lot of calls with her, and she'd gone off her medicine, and they were so empathetic that he tried to talk her down, and she stabbed him in the neck, and he died.
Gosh. Wow.
So I understand that the police officers out there have to actually be aggressive and go after
their own safety.
They have to follow
protect themselves first.
Protocol for themselves. But that being said, once arrested and taken into custody, there should be better screening, I think, on the mental health side.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. There's a different time for us for this week. We're usually on every Sunday night at 8 o'clock. So if you just tuned in, we're a show about addiction, recovery, also tackling, some issues out there that aren't being really spoken about. One of the things I love talking, we're going to bring Dr. Coe here in a second. One of the things, Andrew, I love talking to you about is you have this thing where and I think this is so helpful for people out there right now, mothers, sons, parents, that you could almost, like, let's say you're smoking pot every day. You could say the issue that person is smoking pot for. Not always about addiction. Somebody's doing...
Yeah, I mean, there's correlations between, meaning that, if somebody's smoking pot, you can almost guarantee they're suffering from anxiety or depression.
Yeah.
So if someone's, say, using crack or speed, there's almost a guarantee that they have a thought disorder.
Okay.
So there's definitely correlation. Yeah, there's
schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia, you'll often see schizophrenics have problems with crack cocaine or speed, and it makes them feel normalized. And we would see that a lot in psychiatric hospitals where people would cycle out and in. We'd get them in, get them medicated, and then they would feel flat, so they would go out and use amphetamines or crack to feel what they thought was normal, and that would make them floridly psychotic again.
I was talking to a mother. I was talking to a mother the other day, and she was telling me about her son. Her son is about 20 whatever years old, and she was saying from the time he was 8. She knew he had other issues.
Right.
She knew it. And she would say to people, my son has just issues. Nobody listened.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. I even nowadays, I run into just regular internist doctors, and the way that we're intervening with even especially with anxiety and depression early on, it's just so minimal. You know, we don't deal with it holistically in a way that's
Emotionally.
really
We're not looking at what's
the
wrong.
doctor's the fact that a doctor will, without even sending you to a psychiatrist, give you a script for an antidepressant. And we know now from the studies that are coming out that that's not enough.
Right,
you know,
right.
Antidepressants on their own have a high placebo rate, meaning that people will sort of naturally feel better because they think they're taking a pill. And that for people that are really depressed, that have major depression, without that therapeutic component with that medication, it's almost as worthless as not doing anything.
Because it's mind, body, spirit, everything's connected. Emotionally, you have to tend to something too, how it's affecting them emotionally.
Yeah, you can't, and also you can't keep drinking alcohol and take an antidepressant. But the only thing that really says that is the label on the thing. But how many medications do you get that say don't drink alcohol, but people drink alcohol on them anyway?
Of course.
So, but with an antidepressant in particular, it's very important that people not drink alcohol because, as you were saying, it stops the positive effects of the antidepressant because alcohol is a depressant. So
okay. So by the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. There's an interesting news story in New York, and it's interesting just because he got caught. I always find that with news stories, it's like, you know, do you have an alcohol problem when it's going bad? And there was a dentist in New York, and Patrick got the story, you know, our video guide about this dentist that was drunk, and now he's in jail. So he's one of the few that actually got caught.
It wasn't mouthwash?
It was not. Well, you know what's amazing?
It might have been a lot of mouthwash.
You know what's amazing about that is I was in rehab with a guy years ago who relapsed on Listerine.
Yeah, that's very common.
Now, this guy owned 10
12%
bars.
alcohol.
Yeah, he managed 10 bars on the island of like St. John's, and he was sober for 10 years. He started drinking Listerine.
We had a client that relapsed on Windex. And
Right.
got really
Oh,
sick.
wow, wow.
And-
Nail polish remover I've seen.
And I want to talk about something interesting about this, though, because there's this common thought of a functioning alcoholic, right? There's this myth out there. What does that mean to you?
I think that's actually just a bad term.
Yeah.
I think that's a functioning drug abuser.
Right.
I mean, I think that, you know, as we talk about use, abuse, and addiction, if you get to the point where you're fully addicted, the idea of you actually being functioning is sort of a misnomer. I think you have people, though, that are heavily abusing drugs that are on the edge of crossing into addiction that, you know, that are fully functioning in their own way.
Externally.
Right,
Not
externally.
internally.
Not internally as well.
Right, so that's...
Right.
But that's our problem as a society.
Even then, I mean, when people say they're fully functioning, that doesn't mean that everybody doesn't know, right? I mean, we've had this conversation
all the time.
That's
it's
true.
everybody with vodka, right?
Yeah, the guy,
people out there that go, you know, vodka doesn't smell.
Right.
Are you the only one that think it doesn't smell? Because I could smell it from 20 feet away.
You're also extra sensitive to it, but
emotionally, they're not.
Well, we should
Well, yeah, let's before in the
you
studio
start-
right now is a man of many words and one of the most handsome psychiatrists in the greater Los Angeles area, Dr. Jason Coe. Let's welcome to Clean Radio.
Thank you,
This
Jason.
is like an online dating prep or
Well,
something. Where is Match.com
He might
sponsoring
want that now.
Please.
Welcome, Dr. Jason Coe. One of the, you know what? Before he starts, one of the best therapists, one of the best psychiatrists and therapists, and I'm not just saying that because we're friends. He actually is. He's one of those people that, if you just tuned in, we're in the studio now with Dr. Jason Coe, one of the honest guys in his profession, and welcome back.
We need
to
them.
Clean. Yeah,
Right,
welcome.
exactly.
We
We
need more
really do
honesty.
because you know so many people out there are scared to death of psychiatrists. I called the psychiatrist up one time, and he goes, before he said anything to me, Andrew, he goes, "It's $600 an hour." I'm like, I'm broke.
You know, there's a serious problem within the medical field, and maybe Dr. Coe can talk a little bit about this, but, you know, reimbursement for psychiatrists has been falling. With this fiscal cliff stuff, they've been talking about cutting Medicare for physician fees 26%.
Wow.
You know, it's become, and what's happened is they have this something called an equation of cost, quality, and access, which means they want to lower costs, increase quality, and increase access. But if anybody knows anything about economics, you can't lower the amount of money going into the system and decrease the cost, increase the quality, and increase the access. You have to pay more to increase quality and increase access. So we've had now for over 15 years, politicians and healthcare, business, economic majors, and whatever, you know, trying to develop businesses and models for American healthcare based on a flawed economic system. So there's, you know, primary healthcare reform. And when we talk about like Obamacare and we talk about healthcare reform, it isn't healthcare reform. It's health insurance additions to an already flawed system with hundreds of different policies. There's something called EOBs, explanation of benefits, and most people don't realize that. They think, oh, I get health insurance, and my health insurance is just as good as the next one. But there's actually something called an EOB, an explanation of benefits for everybody that gets a policy, and that determines what kind of health insurance you really have. And there's a huge variation between really great policies and really bad policies.
Right.
So, and people just don't understand
People
that.
don't know their rights either. That's
you don't know until you go to use it.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh my goodness.
And then you're
Then
like,
you're
oh,
charged $1,000.
why did I get this policy?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I'm not here to espouse socialized medicine, although I think it has worked in some countries. It's difficult in America. America's very diverse.
Yeah, we have 300 million people.
But still, I mean, well, here's the conservative over here who's going to say,
No. Listen, you know how I am with this stuff. We would love it.
Well, I think from a constitutional standpoint, it says clearly that the states are responsible for the sick, the indigent, and the mentally ill.
Yeah.
So, why are we not doing that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, as a conservative.
Because it's a flawed system, and
so you're a flawed conservative.
I think we're all
flawed believer.
I think we are all flawed. I think again,
sounding very Christian.
We were discussing this. 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But we were discussing this 10 minutes ago. The problem is like that mother that was worried about her son that said to 20 people, "My son is having issues," and nobody would listen to this mother. Because we don't have a system out there in the schools.
Well, there's also certain people, like, you feel pressured, like you have to talk, like lawyers when you're on the clock. You can't have a nice civilized conversation with an attorney because they're charging you $300 an hour.
Right.
So you're in there, you're like, hey, look, this is going on, blah, 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 blah. This is happening. What do you think? Like, I got to get out of here.
And then half the parents out there are scared to death that the social worker they're talking to in school is going to look at them like they're crazy and report them.
Yeah,
because
it's such a flawed system.
That being said, there is a lot of hope. And I think that, as much as we're talking about the problems in the system, I think it's important to talk about where there is access and how people can get help and that help really works.
And I think that's one of the cool things about KLEAN is that we're actually trying to do this. We're actually on the ground trying to do this. And one of the cool things that you and Dr. Coe have just opened up is our new facility in Washington State. It's a 50-bed facility, and essentially it's a 12-step model.
It's a little different than what we have in KLEAN West Hollywood. KLEAN West Hollywood is very much dual diagnosis. Dr. Coe, who's a psychiatrist, is there 3 days a week. It's very intensive. We have much more, it leans more to higher acuity, people that have relapsed a lot, people that are very difficult clients to treat. Up in Washington, we have a gender segregated population, so females are on one side and males are on the other. And it's more for primary addiction, not so much dual diagnosis, although it does do some dual diagnosis as well.
And it's also very cost effective.
It's much cheaper, yeah. So since we're up in Washington, we're able to offer treatment. Basically, if you have insurance, it's free for you. I mean, it's,
so great.
So the ability for us to treat a lot of people is now available, which is great.
And it's amazing. I mean, and let's talk about that a little bit, Dr. Coe. You haven't said much since you came in. I know you got a little bit of a late start today. You've been working like crazy.
That's true.
And what is exciting about this now is that we're finally able to offer something with health insurance that people get it for, essentially if you have health insurance, we'll take you in KLEAN Washington.
Right. Well, I haven't been up there, so I don't know a whole lot about the program yet, which I know we're starting it up, and I'm going to be up there to look at the program and see how we can make it clinically relevant from a psychiatric standpoint, as well as keep a strong 12-step program and incorporate what we can from KLEAN in West Hollywood up there as well.
Well, let's talk about that. And this is something Andrew and I talk about all the time. So it is possible that the 12 steps and mental health can coexist.
Well, I think I don't think that they never haven't. I think there's some people in the extreme sort of, I guess, right-wing side of AA that claim that people shouldn't take any medication at all, anything that alters their mind. And as we've shown over and over again, despite those people's views, that's a misnomer and a misreading interpretation of AA. So, AA, the 12 steps, has been converted into a clinical model as well called the Minnesota model for treatment. And we use some of those aspects at KLEAN West Hollywood. We do it more in terms of what's cognitive behavioral therapy and didactical behavioral therapy.
What does that mean, by the way? Just
Let's ask another clinician.
Yeah, please. You're using these words out there that are
basically. It means that we use talking and the idea of education, teaching people things, along with communication to change people's behavior.
Well, everything. I mean, it's why it's so successful and why it works so well is because it's not only about the substances. You could put down the substances, but you have to relearn how to live, and you have to relearn how to accept a new way of living with different behaviors, how to respond to different people in your life, to have boundaries, to have these kinds of emotional insights, because that has to change also. You just can't put down a substance and then expect for everything to change, you know.
I believe that substances are a distraction from dealing with your emotions and doing life. And so that's what we want to teach them to do, is to get them back to dealing with their feelings and doing their life, making a life for themselves.
And with that new behavior, yeah.
And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. We're a show about addiction and recovery and the hope and the positive stuff. But one of the things we're going to talk about quickly after we come back, we have a couple minutes before the break, but one of the things I want to talk about is we are going to offer, Andrew and I and Dr. Coe have discussed this, because we know a lot of people out there right now are struggling. We know people that are out there right now that are driving around, don't have money, or insurance, and are absolutely going through one of the roughest times of their life. And add addiction on that, and it's the whammy of whammies. So
that's why they become
it's another Judaism, the whammy of whammies.
But it's this thing that won't stop.
Well, it's this. Because they don't want to deal with their life.
Right, and it's like broke, depressed,
it's
broke.
a negative cycle.
It's this vicious cycle that won't end. And one of the things we want to say right now is you can get out of this vicious cycle. And because we opened up our facility in Washington State with 50 beds, we are going to be offering scholarships to people out there that can't afford treatment right now.
Let's throw the number out there, because I definitely want to have some callers for the second half of the show. Let's, if you're out there suffering, you have some issues, or you're a family member with people with a problem, give us a call. What's the number, Judah?
888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. And if you're out there struggling right now and you can't afford a bed for treatment, give us a call. We'll get you into treatment. The discussion
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? KLEAN Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to KLEAN Treatment Center, that's KLEAN with a K, KLEANTreatmentCenter.com.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. People all the time, whether we're at parties, all over, every time we're at a party and somebody says to us, "Why aren't you drinking?" It's always the next thing the person's going to say to you is, "Well, I don't drink that much." And I'm only drunk right now. So here we got some questions right off the bat. If you're driving out there, or hopefully not driving drunk, some questions for you. If you've ever been, curious, you can find this on Wiki. It's the Cage Questionnaire. Have you ever felt you need to cut down on your drinking? If so, you might have a problem. Number 2, have people annoyed you by criticizing your drinking? That used to be me all the time. And 3, have you ever felt guilty about drinking? I'm 3 for 3 right now when I was drinking. And number 4, have you ever felt you needed a drink first thing in the morning, an eye opener, to steady your nerves or to get rid of a hangover?
Well, that's a physical symptom.
Right.
That's pretty late stage.
That's withdrawal.
Yeah.
Right.
You're withdrawing.
So that's essentially, but let's get to that quickly, because the fourth question is essentially, let's say, forget about it, it's just the hangover. You want but if you're on number 4, you have
hair
alcoholism.
of the dog.
That's essentially
your hands are shaking in the morning and you feel nauseated.
Well, I think you have to have repeated use. I mean, if you the other issue there though is binge drinking, where people will just drink a whole lot one time, and then they'll have that extreme withdrawal symptoms.
Right.
And there's dangers to binge drinking beyond just, say, alcoholism as a disease. Binge drinking can cause death, accidents, whatever. And so if you're engaging in binge drinking, it's reckless behavior and misuse of alcohol and other drugs normally. Let's take some calls. We got a few calls coming in. Let's take Sally on from Santa Clara. Is it
Santa Clarita.
Clarita. She's like,
Yes.
I'm going to have to get my reading glasses. I'm getting old.
It's also learning the state of California. Welcome to Clean Radio, Sally.
Okay.
We'll get to you in a second, Sally. So if you're driving out there, those are some of the questions. You're listening to us online. Those are some of the questions that if you're home right now or your family member is going through this, these are some of the things
These
you
are
should
important
ask.
questions to ask yourself, too.
Right,
This is a screening tool
Yeah.
for primary care physicians. That's what it was developed for.
Okay, let's. We seem to have figured out everything on the board, I hope, here.
Let's go to line one. We have
take
Sally.
line one. That's not Sally. Who is this on line one?
No, this is Sally.
Oh, it is
hi,
Sally.
Sally.
Oh, they
Hi,
had it
Sally.
typed wrong in my little computer in front of me. I'm sorry, Sally. Welcome to Clean Radio. How are you?
Hi. Okay, but very discouraged about resources. My son, Brandon, is on and off heroin, and there's not a lot of resources out there for him. And just reaching out.
How old is your son?
27.
Okay.
And where is
Very depressed, and looking into county programs because he doesn't have insurance and
Right.
the waiting list, and while they're waiting, they go back and take, and it's just so devastating to our family. So I just wanted to know if there is some hope out there.
where is your son right now, Sally?
He's at home.
Where do you live?
Santa Clarita.
Santa Clarita Valley in Southern California.
Okay.
We're all learning geography, Sally, through you. We haven't made it out far out of Hollywood. Sally, how long has this been going on?
I'm sorry?
How long has this been going on?
You know what? It's been going on and off. He went through this about 2.5 years ago, and he actually got picked up and sent to jail.
Did he start with heroin? I mean, when did you first notice there was a problem with just drugs or
Recently,
alcohol in general?
2.5 years ago.
So it just came out of the blue. You
Well,
didn't notice
no,
anything?
I think he's been stuck. His father died in his home, and when he was 14, and I don't think he's ever gotten over it.
Right.
So there was trauma
There's
really
some
early
trauma,
on.
yeah.
Been in and out of the psychotherapy, did the whole thing, but unless they, bring it in, it's not going to help. So family therapy, and so anyway, recently we knew that he was back in because we're missing things, jewelry.
Does he want help? I mean, has he been asking you?
He does.
He
Yes,
does.
yes,
Okay.
He does. Yeah,
Okay.
he does. He's asking for it.
Uh-huh.
But like I said, the waiting lists have been so long. So of course, the family dynamics are just amazing. I have a young teenager at home who's, we're all fed up with it. But we know that it's a disease, and we want him to have help, and we want tough love, but yet support him through this.
Well, Andrew and I, just so you know, Sally, Andrew and I, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio, we're on the phone with Sally, who's struggling with her son. But one of the things Andrew and I often talk about is we're not big advocates for tough love. We're for being tough, but we're not for kicking your kid out.
Right, we're not for enabling,
Right.
which means, allowing your son to use without consequences, but we're not for abandoning or
Right.
punishing people
Correct. And
for
that's
the
what
use.
I'm dealing with, my family and
Yeah.
my close friends, because they don't agree with that philosophy, and I'm in the healthcare,
Yeah.
and I'm a caring person, and it's totally against my
And that's a
grain.
beautiful thing. Don't ever, hate yourself for being caring. I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for my father, who used to say, as long as his son's alive, there's a chance. The
Right,
question is, what are we going to do about your son right now?
right, absolutely.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you have money for airfare?
I'm sorry?
Do you have money? Is there any income for airfare, for a plane ticket? Let's say we said we're going to put your son in treatment in Washington State.
I could find that.
Okay, why don't we, we're going to get your number, and we're going to offer probably a bed up in Washington if your son's interested.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He has to
But
want
he's going to
it.
have to,
Absolutely.
want it, and he's going to have to pay for some airfare.
Absolutely.
But we have a free bed to give away this month, so
A scholarship bed, yeah.
you might have just called at the right time.
That's great.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's an amazing facility in Washington State. He's going to get the care and love he needs up there. And the reason I say is I know the people in Washington State. It's run by one of the people who helped run it is a guy named Milt. He's been sober about 98 years, and he's got ears that he could hear everything going on. And he's a special man. It's a special staff up there.
It's actually a great facility
Yeah.
for people that have been addicted to heroin, too,
Yeah.
because it's very isolated,
Yeah.
so there's no way that they can get drugs brought to
Right.
them or
Right.
snuck
And if
into the facility.
it's one of those things, he's going to drive there. Whoever picks him up, he's not going to even know where he is. and it's beautiful. So please stay on the line, Sally, okay?
That's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And we'll follow up with you as things progress.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Sally.
for
Let's
calling.
just jump into another call. We've
go.
got on line 2, we have an anonymous caller who I guess doesn't want to share their name.
Welcome to Clean Radio, Anonymous.
Hi, thank you for having this show. I'm actually on my way to an AA meeting. Been in the program for many years.
Oh, cool.
And, I've just turned this on for the first time. My husband must have been listening to sports or something on AM, and then
That's right. And now because we're in the tweener period,
I love when that happens.
there aren't many sports, you see. Tweener
so
came
cool when
back.
that happens.
Well, welcome to Clean Radio, Anonymous.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this is such a wonderful program. I'm glad there's something to bring light and information out to people. And
That's
I actually had a clinical type question.
Okay.
Sure.
Does anybody know what the percentages of, because I'm such a big proponent of the 12 steps and it just saved my life. For someone who is in treatment, is there much difference in the success rate from somebody who is going through a 12-step program as
Great
well as
question.
like counseling and CBT as opposed to just like medication?
I think the first thing you have to define is what is success.
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
long-term
people like to sort of overgeneralize, like, you're either fixed or you're not.
Right.
And as you know, this is not something that you can just completely fix. It's something that you have to be vigilant with
Right.
throughout your life.
Yeah.
Once you've sort of, as AA likes to say, become the pickle instead of the cucumber. But that being said, different things work for different people. And I think, AA was developed primarily for the chronic long-term alcoholic at late stage that was entering and looking for help. It's morphed into something much broader than that. And for some people, it works. I found that generally the fellowship aspects of AA is very good for getting people involved, and it can be very good for informing people. The long-term rates of sobriety success with AA are very questionable. There's been a lot of studies that show that the rates are as low as 0.4% after 10 years, generally 3% after 5 years. But that being said, I think that's also unfair, because just because someone relapses doesn't mean they're not dealing with the
Right.
issue of
Right,
alcoholism or drug abuse. My biggest issue with AA alone, I like to see it in conjunction with both. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. I think that you can have therapy, you can have medication, and you can go to AA.
If needed.
Yeah, and I think that, that's, finding out exactly what the problem is, and if there's other underlying issues is very important. And then also everybody has issues that they can deal with in a therapeutic environment. And AA doesn't really offer that.
But if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. We're on the phone with Anonymous, who's asking a great question about, the 12 steps, whether it's AA, Narcotics Anonymous, and treatment. What's better, and not what's better, but
I think I think a sponsor can be a great person sometimes, but they're not clinically trained.
Right.
So you got some great sponsors, and you got some sponsors that are not so great. I hate to say it.
And Anonymous, you've been obviously sober many years. You said decades, right?
Well, yeah, I've been in the program for like 10 years, but I had also relapsed, so I had 5 years.
But you've learned a lot
Right.
along the way, and that's the thing.
And that's what
There's
we're
been-
big about. I'm sober in the 12 Steps Anonymous for over 14 years. And one of the biggest things and why Andrew and I started doing this stuff was because we didn't like certain things that were going on, not with the 12 steps, but with sometimes the people. We didn't like the shunning, like, oh my God, they relapsed, let's lose their number.
But not everybody has to be in the 12 steps to be sober, because
Right.
I am a different example of that. So, I understand the 12 steps. It helped me in the very beginning to understand what the principles were and why it does help people. But in the long run, it wasn't sustainable for me individually. I think us individually, everyone has a different
Right.
And I actually think,
history.
Erica, that's very common.
Yeah.
More and more is, I've been following people and people have been calling, and we see that a lot of people seem to sort of like outgrow AA. And I think AA actually in some ways is set up to do that. Unfortunately, it's also set up for people to make it like their life occupation.
Right.
So, I think once you've gotten what you've gotten from AA, it's good to sort of stay in touch with the program and the fellowship and friends. But I think that you have to go somewhere from there. I think that there's a lot more that could be discovered. And I think Dr. Coe could probably give a little more insight into what are the deeper issues beyond just sort of recognizing that you're an alcoholic and spiritually curing yourself. Is there? What do you think, Dr. Coe?
Well, that's something I always say when I talk to the people at KLEAN, who are getting help is AA and 12-step programs help you discipline or control your addiction, and that's very, very important in the beginning. But after that, they need something more. They need to find out what is driving the addiction. What are the impulses? Where do the urges come from?
Also, the 12 steps, is a bridge back to life. It's not life.
Right.
And I think sometimes people get lost in that.
So, Dr. how do people get that insight?
Well, that's psychotherapy. That's where you start to learn about yourself and the world you're in.
I'm also a psychology major. And
oh, good.
Yeah, I'm graduating soon and hoping to get my master's as well. So I'm really interested in all of this. And
so you've started to look inside and try to understand your feelings and your mental functioning.
And the underlying issues, too.
Yeah, and I'm lucky that I have a sponsor that has always encouraged psychotherapy and has always, said if
you're
on
blessed,
medication.
Right?
And that's what Andrew was saying. You're blessed with that. You're lucky with that sponsor that's like that. But oftentimes, sponsors, I've had people say to me, "I won't sponsor you because you're on an antidepressant."
But you know what? The word "and" is so good here because it shouldn't be black and white necessarily. Like I like that Andrew said, you could do this and you can do that and you can do that. It doesn't have to be.
And it says that in the book. And that's the part of I was talking to you about this on Friday, Andrew, in the office, Anonymous. We were talking about this, that people in the book, it says, this might not be enough for you. Please go seek outside help.
My biggest issue with all this is that it's hard for an individual, and I think for untrained people in AA, to do an accurate assessment of the acuity of someone's problem. Yeah. And there's a lot of drugs that people are taking out there that are very, very dangerous to just detox off of. Yeah. To just come off of things like Valium or Xanax or whatever, if you've been taking a lot along with alcohol, without a proper doctor's supervision, you can have a seizure, you could hit your head, you could die. Right. Just withdrawing from alcohol. We saw it with Amy Winehouse. She tried to just quit drinking alcohol.
Well, that's a dangerous detox.
Very dangerous.
So, and certainly narcotics, I was in Britain, and there was one person out there, a clinician from the 60s, who still believed that it was important that people just kick cold turkey because that was important to sort of them then realizing that they had a problem and that they
you have to feel it.
Yeah, you had to feel it. Like there's this sort of like
modern medication doesn't exist. It's like, oh my God, I have bronchitis. You better feel it.
And I even objected to watching Rehab and Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, where the people were throwing up and having seizures, and that isn't necessary in a detox. And for me to see that kind of stuff out there in public and know that, like at our treatment center, we very rarely have any complications, and if we do, we address them immediately by sending someone to a full medical hospital, general hospital.
Anonymous, by the way, thank you very much for the call. We're usually on at 8 o'clock on Sunday nights, but we do have, so please go to our Facebook page. It's Facebook/KLEAN Radio.
Yeah, our page. We always love that.
And plus, also,
with a K,
clean with a K, you could find all our, and this goes to everybody. We've had amazing guests on the show. You could go to KLEANradio.com, listen to our past guests, and just become a fan because we like this dialogue. Yeah,
we have a lot of comments and running threads up there. There's also a forum. If you go to KLEANTreatmentCenter.com, there's a forum on our company website.
We are just shameless.
I know, we're just plugging our company.
But you know what?
But they're good resources.
They're great resources.
These are resources.
A lot of discussions.
How else are people supposed to find out these things if they're not asking? Right. And for a long time, people have been shunned for asking. And we're saying, let's ask positive questions. Let's be hopeful
and get the dialogue going.
Yeah. Also, if you're in the field and you're getting in the field, give us a call at the treatment center and come by for a tour and find out what we're doing differently at KLEAN versus other treatment centers.
Thank you so much for Anonymous for giving us a call. Hopefully next week,
taking the time.
You'll just have the station on because you wanted it on, and not because your husband was a lover of the Clippers last night. And
I will. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye. And if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. One of the things we're talking about right now is how do you know if you're an alcoholic, an addict? And I think in this case, just substitute with these questions. The number is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. So these are the cage questions. Put these in, whatever drug you're using. Just ask yourself right now, have you ever felt you needed to cut down on your drinking using whatever it is? Number 2, have people annoyed you by criticizing your drinking or using? Number 3, have you ever felt guilty about drinking or using? Number 4, have you ever felt you needed a drink first thing in the morning, an eye-opener to steady your nerves to get
And
rid
that
of
might
the
be first thing in the afternoon if
Right.
you've slept past noon.
But I always used to say that to people because you know how many times in rehab, and Dr. Koh, I'm sure you get this all the time, people say, I didn't drink in the morning.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
what time did you wake up?
What time did you wake
Exactly.
up? Because if you wake up at 4 and start drinking, I know it's not
That's the
technically
denial.
morning anymore.
That's the denial. Yeah.
Dr. Koh, how has your opinion on addiction changed since you've been working? Because you're a mental health guy originally.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, I've been out here about 2 years now, and it's certainly deepened my understanding of the underlying issues that drug addicts and alcoholics deal with. You know, before I thought it was just. I think in some ways, like the lay public, you know, you detox somebody, you get them off the substance, they're going to be okay, but. I've found out that there's a lot of work to be done emotionally and as well as getting their life back together. So the other thing that has impressed me is how hard it is to contain these people, and they need so much help around them to stop their usage. You know, it's more than just the detox.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they say 90 meetings and 90 days in AA, but, you know, it used to be with private insurance that you would get 90 days in an acute care psychiatric hospital just to even get off alcohol or drug addiction. And that's where most people used to go. They used to go to hospitals. You know, the reality is for people that have gotten sober and have realized that, they realize there isn't really any clarity in their life until about 90 days. They're very fuzzy, confused.
Right.
And that's
being
90 days.
And they've often been in a long-term process of sort of developmental delay. If they've been using for 10 years, they've been in a fog. And, you know, waking up from that fog doesn't happen overnight. It takes a process.
And when you do wake up, that's why a lot of people do relapses, because they look around
and they
they're
can't
like,
believe
oh
what they
God,
did for 10 years.
What have I done?
Right.
You know, and they're waking up with
We
the
always talk about the
Have to
biggest,
deal
like
with the wreckage.
the famous drawer full of bills.
Yeah.
you know,
or mail.
Unopened mail.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think I've met one person that used alcohol or drugs that didn't have a drawer or some sort of box or something that was just full with like a year's worth of unopened mail.
That's the procrastination.
I kid you not, about
denial too. Yeah.
I kid you not, about 7 years ago, I was walking down the street with my pal Ben Stein, and I just name dropped, and we were walking down the street with this woman.
He's not a tween or
yeah, he's not. No,
or
but
whatever you call him.
we were walking down the street, and we were dog walking with this girl, and she was telling us, you know, she was newly sober, that she lost her kids. And Ben's like, "Oh my, how did that happen?" You know,
that's pretty good.
That's good impression.
You know, I've known him for a while, and he's an amazing man. And
he did that again, like,
and he goes, "How did you lose your kids?" And it was pretty amazing. And we were like expecting this crazy answer, and she goes, "I didn't open the mail." And she had not looked at the mail to look at her court dates.
Wow.
And this was when she was we had Lee Steinberg in here, the former, the great sports agent, who shared about losing his NFL license. Jerry Maguire, because he didn't call up and reinstate.
Yeah.
Not because
all he had to do was open his mail, but
and
he was
talking
using,
about how his alcoholism didn't even allow that phone call.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, if you're out there and you're wondering if you're an alcoholic, if you're not answering your mail and you got a stash of it in
People
your
will
trunk,
relate to this conversation.
Yeah, and you're not paying your bills and things are getting backed up. You might, and it's not because you're broke. It might be alcoholism.
I do a group on this, and people really, I mean, there's not one person in the room that has not experienced procrastinating, whether it's paying your taxes, going to the doctor, getting your teeth looked at. I mean, everybody suffers with some
fascinating.
kind of...
I mean, my first summer sober was my sober of being at the dentist. I mean, I had 18
Exactly,
cavities filled because
Yeah.
I thought if I'm not getting them checked out, they're okay.
Right. And that is sort of like,
Denial.
and that's the denial of also using, that, you know, if I'm using today and I wake up tomorrow and I can still use, well, I can't really have a problem.
Right.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
So, you know.
But you constantly hear, and this is, if you just tune in and listen to KLEAN Radio, and give us a call at 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. But it's something we constantly hear when people first get sober. They always go, I didn't get sick like this when I was using. It wasn't this bad. when I was using.
Yeah, it's because they were self-medicating. Yeah, they didn't notice. I mean, you can drink your way through a cold a lot better than taking some medicine and trying to be healthy.
Yeah.
So.
But it eventually catches up.
Yeah, eventually you're going to have what are some of the longer-term systemic problems that you see from a health perspective with people that have been drinking, using drugs?
You use words like tweener.
It depends on the substance.
Right.
Alcohol affects the liver. Our heroin addicts, they end up with hepatitis. There are a lot of physical consequences. And they start.
What about the big elephant in the room right now? Marijuana. Everybody's like medical marijuana. Now it's definitely a medicine and it's safe.
That's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on what are the actual
marijuana
consequences
is a very dangerous drug, and people don't seem to realize that because it can be used medically, and it's starting to be legalized in 2 states now. But it affects your ability to think. It affects motivation. It affects memory, and the marijuana is so powerful these days that it's frightening. But people
that's important to talk about, because I want you to give a message to parents right now with what you're saying, because I know you've studied this.
The potency of it?
The potency, because we have a lot of parents from the 60s, Doc, that the weed then was
Well, there's no dosage either.
Yeah.
I mean, how's it a medicine when there's no dosage?
Right.
It's like, you get,
smoke as much as you want.
Smoke as much
right. This is the hydro.
Right.
When your dosage is hydro, you're getting 10 mg of hydro, and this is Kush.
The other thing is marijuana has a 60-hour half-life. So
Wow,
after 60 hours, half of it is still in your system.
Wow.
So if you're smoking
every day,
twice a week, you're stoned all the time.
Or twice a day.
Or twice a day, right? Then you're stoned the whole week.
Well, so it's always in your system.
I mean, I went with a friend to one of these clinics because I had to check it out, and I couldn't believe, they have pot to wake up, pot to go to sleep.
The brownies,
they had
the candies.
Peppermint flavored pot for waking up.
Oh, for everything.
Yeah, it was supposed to taste like toothpaste. I'm like, really? That's your toothpaste now is your marijuana?
But one of the other dangerous aspects is people don't think it's dangerous.
Right, I was just going to say that,
Well, about a month ago, Andrew, when I was on that show, The Young Turks, I name drop again, and Tommy Chong was on that episode, and I didn't get a chance to be on it. But he's this huge pot advocate, right? Him and Cheech did all these.
But even he talked about. I saw that. I saw the rest of the show because I had to watch you on it, of course.
I didn't watch the rest of the show. I've just been focusing on me.
You just watched you. Yeah. Wow, of course.
I recorded it for 6 minutes.
I should have known. If you watched the rest of the show, Judah, he actually talked about moderating usage. He was like, I think it's important that people not just smoke a ton of pot. It's not good for you. He said, smoking a little bit now and then can be good for a creative process, and that's how he's used it. He said in the past he used to use a lot more, and in some ways he regretted some of that. So, and we see that people aging out and using, there's some people that can do that. They can drink a lot during college. They can binge drink. They can drink every day. They can be out of control.
People.
Yeah, and then they get a job. They get responsible, and they moderate their drinking to 2-3 drinks at a time.
All by themselves.
All by themselves. Yeah. And there's
because they realize they become dull. And
also they can't function responsibly.
It's taking away from life.
Yeah. But marijuana really shifts people's behaviors. Again, to circle back to the behavioral thing, when I see clients that come in that have, for 10 years been smoking and that don't know how to really deal with their emotions when something comes up, and they smoke to get up in the morning, they smoke to go to school and go to a class. I mean, it's really gets in the way of
I'll
their
just say it. I've always hated potheads. I can't help it. Potheads, they name their bongs. They're just.
They worship it.
Hate's a pretty strong word.
I dislike very highly. No pun intended.
You don't like the lifestyle. You're not.
It's just okay. I get it. You've chosen this.
Well, I have a little more empathy for them.
Yeah.
And it comes from a culture that glorifies drugs.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, there is that sort of crunchy granola, let's do drug kind of subculture, which I think is
cool.
And hallucinogens. Well, half my record collection would be gone, as Bill Hicks had said, if it wasn't for drugs. So, I think that.
But you might have a bigger.
I'm hard pressed to say that human beings' experimentation with drugs throughout time has definitely led to a lot of cultural developments. The point is that those developments have happened, guys. It's like you're not going to hit some new plateau.
And the script's already been written.
But
how big might your collection have been had Kurt Cobain not done heroin. You know, he might have had another 25
Kurt
years.
had depression,
Right.
and he had a problem with heroin, and
Right.
he had some pretty severe medical illnesses with it where it went untreated.
So we always like to look at and say, but it's a great, like I know your music collection, and I know a lot of it was caused by drugs. but the reason your record collection isn't bigger is because a lot of those people are dead, and they stopped creating.
I wouldn't say caused by drugs, but drugs
influenced.
were a part of it.
Right.
But you look at Bob Dylan, who was an incredible artist, and drugs definitely did have effect on some of the messages of his early work.
Yeah, I
but
couldn't understand it.
The fact that he's alive now is great, but I'm sure that he'd be a lot more higher functioning if he hadn't abused himself quite so much.
Other
and I'd be able to understand what he was saying when he was singing.
That's why they have the lyrics in the CD there.
In the jacket.
You actually have to buy it. You can't just take it off.
But here's the thing.
But even the great Bob Dylan couldn't sustain himself on drugs either.
That's true.
And he knew that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And there's only
he did much better than his peers.
There's only a couple that did, and I'm not gonna. I always say I'm not gonna hedge my life on the couple that actually did.
We got a minute and a half. We got to say goodbye to everybody.
I want to thank everybody for listening. We're usually on a Sunday nights. Give us a listen to at KLEANRadio.com.
Sunday nights at 8 p.m.
Sunday nights at 8 p.m. We'll actually
West
be on
Coast
tonight, Sunday night on XM 165. So if you're listening to the show tonight and you're in trouble and you need help, the offer goes to you about Washington State too. That if you need help and there's something we can do to try and get you a bed, we're going to try our hardest to get you into treatment whenever we can. Give us a call at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. There is hope out there, people. We see it all day long. We see people getting, that girl that Twittered me and said, that tweeted me that said she's an outpatient right now, not anything to do with KLEAN. The only thing that had to do with KLEAN was she listened to the show and gave us a call.
Let's just thank our fellow
we're walking
broadcasters
hope too,
today.
Let's thank the amazingly talented, always easy on the eyes, Dr. Jason Coe.
He's joined that category.
And let's thank Erica Fab Spiegelman. Go to ericaspiegelman.com, and Erica and I have a blog coming out pretty soon.
Oh, it's going to be, you got to get there through KLEANcenter.com?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
He said, she said.
We're going to be addressing a lot of questions.
All these, it's like addiction for dummies.
See you next Sunday at 8 p.m.
The discussion continues at KLEANRadio.com.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? KLEAN Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to KLEAN Treatment Center, that's clean with a K, KLEANTreatmentCenter.com.